Josh Ellis with the North Carolina News Network. We're sitting in the Education Subcommittee meeting this week. Josh, what pops out at you regarding I'd say the initial round of education spending?
Well, very different approaches in terms of how they're dealing with various sections of the education budget. You look at the K through 12 budget, all the public schools, very specific cuts on what they want to see reductions in. The biggest hit there are things like teaching assistants and other non-instructional support. So the committee chairs have said they want to protect the classroom, and they have, for the most part, protected the teachers, but the other folks that are supporting those teachers do take a pretty big hit. A lot of other pet programs that have, for example, dropout prevention grants, something that, former Speaker Hackney always made a big initiative, and things like that are seeing some big cuts. Whereas you look at the UNC system, where for the most part, other than a few cuts to particular programs, they're given the flexibility to make those cuts. And they do take a much bigger chunk, about 15% from the universities compared to about 9% for public schools. And so, very different approach to how this manages, but still some serious education cuts.
Yeah, going back to the K through 12 funding, the classroom teachers funding, how does that, with the teachers' assistants from second grade up being eliminated, how does that mesh with what Governor Perdue has said she would like to see in a budget?
Well, Governor certainly wants to keep those positions. It's hard to do, though. She doesn't necessarily. Her budget did include some cuts to those teacher assistants, not as far, and it also didn't eliminate them in certain grades. The teachers have said, look, especially in these grades, it's very important for us to have some extra help in making sure that kids don't get far behind. But the Republicans said, look, this is the matter of what we're dealing with. We've got a tough budget situation, and those are the areas they're going to have to go.
What is able to be achieved when this subcommittee recommends 8.8% for public schools, 10% for community college, 15.5% for the UNC? The big picture of this is what comes out of this with those staggered amounts.
Well, certainly this is the very first lap in the marathon. So these numbers, traditionally we've seen the House been more supportive of public schools, and the Senate's been more supportive of the university system. So I wouldn't expect that trend to stop this year, although we do have a different dynamic with Republicans now in charge. I do think the university system is going to take a bigger hit than they've seen in recent years, primarily because the Republican budget writers are saying that not only are they getting state money, they're getting federal money and other private donations, and so they're better able to, in their words, they're better able to manage those cuts and kind of soften the blow there.
House Speaker Tom Tillis has openly said, I'm working very closely with Senate budget writers to come out with a bill that maybe they'll have it reconciled faster in the calendar year. Even if secondarily, at this stage of budget recommendations, how involved would the Senate be, even if it's in the background?
Well, they're involved. I mean, they're certainly aware of a lot's going on. Traditionally, when we've seen a House budget or whatever chamber went first, we would see the House budget, and then the Senate would do their version, and then they'd work out the differences. I think you're going to see maybe them 90%, 85% on the same page, so that when it actually hits the floor and starts moving on the House, it's really going to be a lot faster process than we've seen in recent years.
The Education Subcommittee chairmen say they will allow amendments to be offered beginning next week, probably a vote coming next week as well on these budget recommendations. Is there a serious chance amendments will be adopted, or do these budget discussions tend to be locked in? You get a public hearing, vote down the amendments, vote on the proposals?
It really depends on what those amendments do. If you're talking about putting more money in a program that draws your bottom line number for each subcategory out of whack, then that's going to be tough to pass. You're going to have to probably come up with some other ways to offset that change. If you're talking about something that maybe procedurally moves stuff around, or more of a minute detail relative to the actual money, that kind of stuff could probably go through. But it's going to be hard to come in there and say, I want a whole lot more money when there's not a lot of money to go around.
Well, Josh, we'll be doing this dance for weeks and weeks. Hope to have you back on real soon.
Sounds good.